thing is memorized and we know it, and oh, so I don't need to know this story. But sometimes when you take a second glance at something, you can get something better than you did the first time.
Yeah.
When I began to read, Daniel was the last of the four major prophets. If you would look in the Old Testament, it starts off and it put the prophets in categories of major prophets and minor prophets. Many of you know that it's not talking about being big time or being insignificant. Like, these are the big time prophets. No, major prophet is that the bulk of their prophecies were more than those of the minor prophets, which had less prophecies that were recorded. So it's not about, status or notoriety or popularity when they are called major prophets. But Daniel was the last of the four major prophets. He was assigned to the Gentiles. And when we was reading, a lot of prophets, they were assigned to Judah and to Israel, but Daniel was assigned to the Gentiles. He was assigned to the heathens. He was assigned to those who didn't know God, to those who didn't have a relationship with God, for the main purpose to show God's concern to everyone, whether good or bad, that God still loves you.
Right.
And a lot of times we have a word, but we only want to talk to church folks because, first of all, we feel a sense of connection with them, because if you tell a testimony, you don't have to do too much explaining.
Right.
You don't have to tell them everything that you're doing. It's not that you don't want to witness or that you don't love anybody, but it's just a familiarity that, well, they're not going to listen anyway, or I don't want to come off as deep or too spiritual. And so sometimes we put our relationship with God on mute when we're around people who need it the most. And sometimes we need to be able to be to the place like Daniel, where we are not afraid to pray and let people know, this is my lifestyle.
My goodness.
This is the life that I live. I'm not doing it for a show. I'm not doing it so that you will pat me on my back, but this is just who I am. I'm not ashamed of God. I'm not going to put him in a closet. Dottie, people said I don't have a closet religion, and I can't hide the God I serve. I got to let the world know wherever I go. And so we have to be the same way. We cannot get to the place where we're going to just hide God when it's inconvenient.
Yes.
Or when there are bad consequences for being a Christian. Some people go through what I call the Christian peer pressure. You're real saved in the sanctuary. And you'll shout and you'll dance, but then when you get around some dignified people, you put your praise on mute. Because it doesn't look sophisticated to let people know you speak in tongues. Because when you get around certain company, you want to come off as professional. So you don't want to let people know that you sweat and jump and buck and shout in your church. And so when certain people want to come to your church, you want to have a toned down service. We don't want to run too much because we don't want to come off as ignorant. But you have to get to the place where you realize that the things of God are foolishness to those who have a natural mind, or as the Bible says, a carnal mind. We have to get to the place where we amplify God, not only in our praise, not only in the way that we dress or the way that we preach or speaking in tongues, but in our integrity. We must have a godly, consistent lifestyle, that we live holy whether someone's looking or not. That we live righteous whether we're in the pulpit or whether we're in a snake pit. We're going to do what God says do. You have to do it when God is watching, and when people are watching and everybody's looking at you, and then you have to still live holy when nobody's watching. And that, my friend, is a hard thing to do sometimes. I mean, we get up with the testimonies and we tell all the good stuff.